Today on Rappler, a defiant Senate President Enrile tells critics, "You can't destroy me." Ad veteran Yolanda Ong files an 88 million peso countersuit against Senate President Enrile. And U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton denies charges of a cover-up in the Benghazi, Libya siege.
We've come a long way in the past 4 years, and we cannot afford to retreat now.
Hello, I'm Carlos Santamaria, sitting in for Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. A defiant Juan Ponce Enrile tells his critics, "You can't destroy me." He also confronts head-on claims linking him to his chief of staff. Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile is all smiles in a campaign sortie in Laguna. He says he doesn't regret bringing up the deaths of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano's late father. Cayetano and Enrile are in a word war over the Senate President's handling of Senate funds.
Ang asawa ko ang nagbigay ng pera, 1 million, para maitayo yung law office ni Cayetano dahil umiiyak sa akin, wala siyang trabaho dahil pinatalsik ng Accra dahil dun sa Pepsi Paloma case.
Enrile also addresses speculation about his relationship with his chief of staff, lawyer Gigi Reyes. Cayetano criticized Reyes after she called him a hypocrite for not accepting Senate funds. Enrile admits Reyes resigned, but says he wants her to stay. He says he brings the issue before the people, confident of vindication. Ad veteran Yolanda Ong files a countersuit against Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. Last year, Enrile filed a civil suit against Ong. He asked for 31.5 million pesos in damages for an allegedly libelous column. He claims the column, quote, besmirched his reputation. Last week, Ong filed a counterclaim asking the court to dismiss the damaged suit. Instead, she says Enrile must pay her 88 million pesos in damages and 1 million in attorney's fees. Ong says she did not cause Enrile any damage. His reputation is not as spotless or untarnished one as he alleges. If the court favors Ong, she says she will donate the money to the victims of the Marcos dictatorship. Ong says Enrile can afford to pay 89 million pesos because he has a net worth of 117.7 million pesos. That's based on his latest statement of assets. Ong's attorney is human rights lawyer Jose Manuel Diokno. He says, "It is not often that we get a chance to litigate history and look deeply into the reputation and character of a public figure as prominent as Senator Enrile." Last year, Ong published an article entitled "Like Father, Like Son." Enrile's damage suit reads, the article characterizes Enrile as liar, fraud, and manipulator. It accuses Enrile of attempting to revise history and, quote, entice the electorate to support his son, Jack Enrile. And our social media post of the day is about this story. Tony Joaquin leaves this comment on Rappler.com using his Discuss account. At last, we have a situation that many honorable Filipino citizens had yearned for. An aggrieved professional citizen who knows that she is fighting a popular politician. We shall cheer and pray that the designated officials in our Philippine courts act as they should and not be cowed by power and personality. After their word war, Senate Minority Leader Alan Peter Cayetano still wants Senate President Enrile to address the selective release of Senate funds. In an interview Thursday, Cayetano repeats his call to Enrile to allow a private, independent audit of Senate funds. The argument stems from Enrile's decision to exclude 4 senators from getting additional Senate funds. The 4 Enrile critics only got the first tranche. The rest got a total of 1.6 million pesos. He adds, this issue will not end until they open the Senate's books. On Wednesday, the argument turned personal when Enrile brought up the debts of Cayetano's late father. Cayetano says Enrile is not addressing the real issue.
Wala na sa akin itong lahat, no? But in-expect ko pa rin yung PR campaign nila dahil ganun ang naging style nila talaga sa nakakaraan mga labanan, no? That they won't directly answer the issue, pero mamemersonal parate. So,
Cayetano's sister Pia says in a tweet, "It's sad to see my deceased father dragged into this, when issues raised by Senator Alan are serious." It's been a week after a U.S. minesweeper ran aground on Tubataha Reef. The Americans say they will remove the ship by lifting it with a crane. The Philippine Coast Guard says, quote, "The boat will be lifted and brought to a shipyard." The Coast Guard says the operation will not begin until early February. That's when the Singaporean salvage company hired by the U.S. Navy will be ready. After a preliminary assessment, the Coast Guard rules out other options such as dragging the ship with a tugboat or dismantling piece by piece. The USS Guardian crashed into the reef January 17. 2 days later, it turned 90 degrees because of strong currents and winds. The Philippine National Police says 22 police officers involved in the Quezon shooting will face administrative charges. PNP Director General Alan Purisima says this includes Superintendent Hansel Marantan, who headed the checkpoint. The 22 cops will be placed under restrictive custody. This comes after a police probe said violations were committed by checkpoint team. The National Bureau of Investigation will determine if the policemen also face criminal charges. On January 6, police killed 13 gang members in a checkpoint south of Manila. The Department of Foreign Affairs confirms Thursday a 7th Filipino worker was killed in Algeria. DFA spokesman Raul Hernandez says the body was identified by the Filipinos' British employers. 6 Filipinos were killed while 12 survived. The 72-hour hostage drama took place in the North African desert. Hernandez says, quote, "Most of them died from gunshot wounds and explosions. 2 other Filipinos remain missing. 4 more are in an Algerian hospital recovering from injuries." North Korea says Thursday it plans to carry out a nuclear test and more rocket launches targeting the United States. North Korea's National Defense Commission says, quote, "The high-level nuclear tests are aimed at our archenemy, the United States." It does not indicate when the test might be carried out, neither does it explain the meaning of high level. North Korea also condemns the sanctions announced by UN Security Council in response to its rocket launch last month. Reports say Pyongyang finished technical preparations and could conduct an atomic test within days of a decision by leader Kim Jong-un. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton denies Republican charges of a cover-up over the September 11 attack in Benghazi, Libya. On Wednesday, Clinton testifies before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Republican senators question her on the lack of security at the compound in Benghazi, where U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 others were killed. Senator Ron Johnson repeatedly asked Clinton why the administration initially blamed the attack on protests against an anti-Islam video. Clinton responds, "What difference does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and to do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again." Speaking before a Senate panel, Clinton says there was no administration cover-up. But top Republican senators reject her explanations. Senator Rand Paul says she should have been fired for ignoring requests for additional security. Clinton says she takes full responsibility.
We've come a long way in the past 4 years, and we cannot afford to retreat now. When America is absent, especially from unstable environments, there are consequences. Extremism takes root, our interests suffer, our security at home is threatened.
Let's now look at Rappler's Rap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 2, in a move that marks another change for the military, the U.S. Defense Department says it will lift the ban on women serving in combat. Last year, the American military allowed openly gay troops for the first time. U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta and Armed Forces Chief General Martin Dempsey are expected to announce the lifting of the direct combat exclusion rule. This would open thousands of combat posts to American women. At number 5, a government panel reviewing India's sex crime laws proposes tougher jail terms, but stops short of calling for the death sentence. The review was prompted by the fatal gang rape of a student in New Delhi. A panel member says the maximum sentence for gang rape should be raised to life imprisonment. India's 153-year-old criminal code says rapists should serve a minimum of 7 years and a maximum life term. And at number 9, U.S. defense company Deep Space Industries announces plans to send a fleet of spacecraft into space. Its purpose? To mine asteroids for metals and other materials for further space exploration. DSI plans to send asteroid prospecting spacecraft into space. DSI predicts that in 10 years, it will be able to harvest metals from asteroids to build space-based infrastructure. For the full top 10, visit Raptor.com's The Wrap. Leaders of transsexual groups say gender identities are evolving. They also challenge stereotypes, calling for more openness and acceptance. Bea Cupin reports.
Girl, boy, gay, lesbian. Sexuality and gender identities are straightforward that way, right? Think again. In the latest of Rappler Sex Talk series, resident sex writer Ana Santos hosts a Google Hangout about why Filipinos need to rethink their concepts of human sexuality. Society of Transsexual Women of the Philippines Secretary Charlize Saballe goes over the basic concepts of gender and sexuality. She says there's your gender identity, or a person's sense of his or her body. Biological or assigned sex is the gender you're born with. Sexual orientation, on the other hand, is an individual's preference when it comes to love, romance, and intimacy. So how do you, quote, define a transgender person?
A transgender person is an individual whose gender identity, our I, and or our gender expression, our E, is not traditionally aligned with the A or the assigned sex.
But the word's definition is still changing. And that's where the confusion and sometimes insensitivity happens. Trans men, for instance, are often labeled tomboys. They aren't, says Day Cayosa, member coordinator for Transman Pilipinas.
We were living as a man, we're trapped in a woman's body.
The difficulties of transgender people in the Philippines don't end there. The most basic of daily tasks become tricky.
Sa MRT, di ba meron female train, and then the guards would sometimes not allow trans women to board the train, and they would say, hindi ka pwede dyan, bawal ka, lalaki ka, so doon ka sa kabila.
The Philippines lacks laws that allow transgender people to change their genders on official documents. Getting documents for employment wasn't a walk in the park for Day.
Titignan ka nila and then sabihin nila, ikaw ba to?
As with most taboo topics, the problem's there because people don't talk about it enough.
For the longest time, ang mga napag-uusapan yung L, lesbian, yung G, yung gay, yung and B, the bisexual. But discussions around transsexuals, transgender ay kulang na kulang pa rin tayo.
Ramil challenges Filipinos to go beyond the stereotypes and question close-minded views on sexuality and gender identity.
We have those social constructs which have been assigned na, parang pinanganak pa lang, naka-assign na sa atin. And I think it's high time that we question also these constructs.
Yeah. Bea Cupin, Rappler, Manila.
Watch the Google Hangout in full on Rappler.com. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter, which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click on how you feel, and your vote comes down to the mood navigator in the middle of the front page, which crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that got the most clicks. I see a lot of different colors on the mood meter today. For instance, Yoleong files a counterclaim versus Enrile makes 81% of people happy. People are also happy about Google opening its first office in the Philippines. And our sex columnist Ana Santos makes 71% of people sad with her piece, Sex at the Drop of a Tweet or a Like. Most of the mood meter, however, is red. In this case, propelled by the word war between Senate President Enrile and Senator Alan Cayetano. Today's story about how the Senate President defies Cayetano makes 72% of people angry. All contributing to the mood of the day, today most people are angry. That's Rappler's Newscast for today, Thursday, January 24, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Carlos Santamaria. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.